Alzheimer's is a disease of the brain that causes problems with memory, thinking, and behaviors. It is not a part of normal aging, nor is it a mental illness. The mission of the African American Caregiver and Dementia Project here in Minneapolis is to expose that elephant in our community and to aggressively move towards health equity for all people of color. The greatest risk factor for Alzheimer's disease and related dementia is age. African Americans entering the age of 65 and over has more than doubled since 1995 at 2.7 million. By the year 2030, there will be 6.9 African Americans at risk for Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. That is 4 times higher than the rate of whites in the same age group. The call to action is to get educated. Maya Angelou said, "I did then what I knew then, but when I knew better, I did better." So let's get educated.
Well, I can tell you what I know from seeing my husband. They call it Alzheimer's.
Why do they call it that, do you think?
Well, I'm not really sure. I think the name is Alzheimer's, but maybe Alzheimer's is easier to say. But anyway, I've been noticing changes in my husband. He's forgetting things, and when I remind him of it, he seems to get angry and agitated with me. And
Did he get better?
slowly, he's getting worse. I see changes in him. His memory is getting not so good, and when I remind him of the things that he said, he doesn't remember. He gets angry with me. I'm really frustrated, and I'm not really sure how to cope with him. I need some help. I need some information.
Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear you talking about Alzheimer's. I'm from the American Indian community, and I recently was a caregiver for my mother who passed away from dementia. When I got the chance to be a caregiver, I was already well into the stage, and I didn't know what I was battling. In the Indian community, there was very little information that I could find about what I was fighting, and I thought my family, our culture was we took things a day at a time, and tomorrow was going to be better. It didn't. There were some good days, there were bad days, and we did our best to try to help make this process as best as we could for it. But I found that the system really doesn't really understand what Alzheimer's is. I never got a diagnosis that she had Alzheimer's. The only thing that I got was that she needed round-the-clock supervision. And for me, a cultural perspective, it was fun having the family there 24/7, but it was a lot of work. But there are things that I wish I could have done better. And that would have been possible with more education and information. It just wasn't there. You know, do your best and be there for them, and I know, but culture is very important.
I'm so glad you're all talking about this. In my Somali community, we don't recognize it, Alzheimer's. We don't run to the clinic. We kind of handle it by ourselves at home. My mother is having dementia, and she forgets to turn off the tap and floods the bathroom, and when she tries to cook, she burns the food, and she forgets to turn off the stove. So somebody has to take care of her 24 hours. I have a job and I have responsibilities to take care of, but I have to prioritize her. And at this point, really, I'm not even sure what to do.
Oh, here's Dr. Brown now. Dr. Brown.
Hello, good afternoon.
I've got a question for you. I'm struggling with my husband, who was just recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
And can you talk to me a little bit about what are some of the signs?
Alzheimer's disease is a very complicated diagnosis. One individual is not affected the same as any other. One of the most early signs that we see with Alzheimer's disease is memory loss, and it's usually short-term memory loss. What you may find is that you have to repeat yourself to your husband often, and he may frequently ask repeat questions over and over again. I can assure you that this is not intentional. It's usually an indication of progression of dementia. That being said, it's not less frustrating on your part. The opposite end of the spectrum would be withdrawal. They don't want to participate or ask questions because they feel like they won't remember. And that itself can lead to depression. So it's very important to have him evaluated so that we can interact appropriately.
Doctor, I was a caregiver for my mother who had dementia, and it wasn't until she was in the late stages and I found out really that she had vascular dementia. So it was a very difficult process. And I know for at least the American Indian community, we need education and we need to know more about this disease that's coming. Are there ways that we can share this information?
One of the things that we're working on in the medical community is community education. The best thing is to make sure that a patient is screened every year through their primary care physician, and we are really pushing during your annual physical that you have a dementia evaluation included in that. We have a lot of resources in the community. Senior Linkage Line, for example, is a location that you can call no matter where you are in the state. They could give you information about resources in your own community. But you have to get the patient screened and evaluated and make it aware that they're actually dealing with dementia before it's too late. As you know, there's no cure, but there's something that we can do at all stages of the disease.
Wanted to ask you also, in my situation, it's a little bit different, although that there's a lot of similarities in what we've all been discussing. But basically, I'm totally confused about what is dementia and what is Alzheimer's. And it's new. I'm not even sure that I'm pronouncing it correctly. I have an 88-year-old mom who used to be a kindergarten teacher and used to speak 5 languages. And she's reverted back to Spanish. She only remembers things from a long, long time ago when she was a child, and her mother and her father who were deceased. And she kind of is like boxed in that time zone of her life. She spends a lot of time looking for help in Spanish, like things will be lost. ¿Qué pasa? ¿Dónde están las cosas? ¿Dónde estoy? And when all the folks that come around, the neighbors and so forth, she has perfect conversation with them in Spanish. In the elevator, she does things like, or when she's in public, she tries to make friends. Hola, ¿cómo está? ¿Qué hiciste hoy? ¿Te acuerdas de mí? She talks to people like if she had known them forever, and in perfect Spanish. And I'm standing there with the wheelchair, and everybody's like, oh, how's she doing? What is she saying? So it's sad because she is sad that she doesn't remember, but yet she's living in a different time zone in her space in life. But I just don't understand it.
Well, that's probably one of the most common, and if not the most common question I get when I'm evaluating patients. What is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease? Dementia is the diagnosis that results in neurodegeneration and the brain's inability to communicate between cell types. Alzheimer's is a subtype of dementia. So there's a menu of diseases that are called dementia. Alzheimer's is just one of them.
We need to remember that how important culture is. It's very critical in giving good care to our elders. My name is Katie Sample. My husband's name is George, and he has always been a very active person in the community, and he is now a patient at Walker Methodist Healthcare Center, and he had a wonderful experience of having some of the young people that he used to work with when they were teenagers and now they're adults, who surprised him and were able to talk to him and remind him of those good days that he gave them when he was coaching their football team. It was a beautiful surprise and very important. In Alzheimer's, sometimes they say they're your memory is best, long-term memory is best in short-term. So we saw that happen with him because he remembered the names. He was very surprised. He could make connections, and he still talks about that experience when they came to visit him and reminded him that they gave him a watch. The last day of the program, there was one of the girls that used to always say, "Mr. Sample, what time is it?" And he remembered that. And that's very important to have those kind of things happen to you in that stage of your life. When we're dealing with people who have Alzheimer's and dementia, they need to feel connected to who they always have been, who they are. It is not good when we take them out of their environment and just strip them of everything that is familiar to them. The interests that they have always have need to be help them to connect with them. We need to have the young people, the grandchildren, the people that they have always been accustomed to seeing, even if they don't talk to them, having them in their environment. But your culture, how you eat, how you walk, how you talk, who you really are, it needs to be a part of your life, no matter what stage you're in, and especially during the time of dementia and Alzheimer's. It's very important to stay connected to your culture, through your church, through your family, through your community, through your friends, through the young people, your grandchildren, and those that love you and care about you.
I think the first step in supporting this movement of understanding with dementia and the effect of dementia is, of course, talking about it over the pulpit so people can come out of this ignorance about dementia and so we can be informed so we then can serve effectively. Black folk have always taken care of their people because of the mistrust of the mainstream and the mistrust of the service delivery system. Black folk have always not allowed their families to go into nursing homes or, we will take care of them at home.
I live here in the Twin Cities, and my siblings live in Louisiana. Every 6 weeks, I will go home and help with my mom, and that was my commitment to my mom. Our people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And when our people are destroyed with the lack of knowledge, without the lack of resources, so therefore that's why that sometimes we go into the marketplace. We're seeking out those programs so they can be assistance for us. They have so many programs out there, but I think that Volunteers America has one of the best in the Twin Cities.
Being the church, especially in the Black community, of where everything happened, it happened around the church. The church was the springboard. The civil rights movement was not just a civil rights movement, it was a church movement of people coming together, basically saying that justice has to be lifted up. And so getting back to our roots when it comes down to the importance of the voice that the Black church has, I believe is paramount with this issue that has touched even our congregation. And we didn't have enough information on it to be able to respond sensitively or respectfully. We desire to get the word out. This really goes against the tradition a lot of times in the Black community to speak about mental health issues. We used to call it, I believe, it being senile, and it's not being senile. It's a disease of the mind and the brain, and it deteriorates the mind and the memory. And we're going to cross over that threshold of ignorance and begin to have some workshops in our church and be able to talk this out as a church community, but also open it up for conversation with the public.